Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's session of Every Mark Matters. We are going to have a look at Edexcel History Paper 2 with a specific focus on Anglo-Saxon and Norman England. We're going to have a look at 3 exam questions today, 2 gateway questions or easy questions I like to call them, and then 1 slightly more difficult question. Our first 2 questions that I would like to show you is these ones here that you can see on the screen. That is, describe one feature of the career of Bishop Odo. And then finally, describe one feature of the Normanisation of the church after 1070. I'd like to suggest that you write these down before you answer them, as what I'm going to do is I'm going to annotate these questions and explain how to answer them, and more importantly, how to get full marks. So today, let's have a look at this first question. So obviously the structure will be the same, as it's the same question in essence. As you open paper 2, this will be question 1A and question 1B. They used to do this as describe 2 features, but what they've done as a result of 2024 is they've just made these 2 questions a little bit easier, along with the rest of the paper a little bit easier as well. So let's have a little look at this first question here. So describe one feature of the career of Bishop Odo. So I'm just going to start with the basics. Let's just start with the timings, okay? So nice and easy, just 2 marks. Excellent. Let's just call it 1 minute a mark. Let's just call it 2 minutes. And again, you don't want to spend a great deal of time on this, so maybe you don't want to spend any more than 2 to 3 sentences. The start of the question is describe one feature. So the simple way to do this is all you need to do is state a feature and describe it. Dead easy. So what I'm going to suggest you do is I'm going to suggest that you hit pause right now and you have a go at answering these 2 questions on your own, and then in about 4 or 5 minutes you and I will have a go and have a little look at my own, and you can self-assess yours as we go. Okay, so press pause and have a go. Set a 5-minute timer and get started. Okay, so I'm hoping there that you've spent 5 minutes, or even less. If you've done less than 5 minutes, that's fantastic. Let's have a look at one of my answers and see how they would do. So I'm conscious that you might struggle to read my handwriting, so I'm going to read it out to you. One feature of the career of Bishop Odo was his greed. For example, I know that after the Battle of Hastings, William made Odo the 2nd wealthiest man in England. I also know, as regent, he illegally stole land from the Anglo-Saxons, leading to his downfall from grace. For that second question, one feature of the Normanisation of the church was Archbishop Lanfranc. Lanfranc replaced the Anglo-Saxon Archbishop Stigand in 1070 and used the Church of England to assert William's dominance over the Anglo-Saxons. Shame on me, look at that, made a little grammatical error there. Over the Anglo-Saxons. I also know that the Pope never recognised Lanfranc's importance, as he wanted to limit his power. So I'll go back to what I told you before you started. Again, the main way to pick up these 2 marks here is you need to state the feature and describe it. Describe it. Now the exam board are a little prickly here, so what they tend to do is if you just stated a feature and brought in a vague fact, what they'll most likely do is they'll just give you 1 mark for it. What we're looking for is to be as specific as possible. And you'll notice here what I've actually done is I've stated a feature here. So there we go. I'm going to put, he was greedy. So I'm going to put 1 mark in green just there. And then what I do is I go on to use phrases such as, for example, I know. And what I'm doing there is I'm stating the knowledge that I have. This is a descriptive phrase. For example, I know that after the Battle of Hastings, William made Odo the second wealthiest man in England. I also know that as regent, he illegally stole land from the Anglo-Saxons, leading to his fall from grace. Now, you could possibly get away with the fact that you're just using 1 fact for this type of question, but I tend to add in 2 simply because what happens is it's really good knowledge, and moreover, it's really good technique for the later questions later on down the line. So I would suggest whenever you have any question in history, is when you state a new reason, you back it up with 2 facts, and I'll explain why later on in a moment. So again, here's, I would say, my second mark here for this question. 1 for the one about the fact that he made him the second wealthiest man, and 1 that he stole land from the Anglo-Saxons as regent. So there's my second mark, making that 2 out of 2 for that second one. Okay, going on to the second one actually. So 1 feature of the Normanisation of the church was Archbishop Lanfranc. Again, I've stated the feature there, so there's 1 mark, nice and easy. Lanfranc replaced the Archbishop Stigand in 1070 and used the church to assert William's dominance over the Anglo-Saxons. Again, there's 1 fact. I've backed it up with the second one. I also know the Pope never recognised Lanfranc's importance, as he wanted to limit his power. Again, the example won't necessarily need 2 facts for this question, but it's also really good to get into good practice. So I'm adding in my second mark there. So again, for the second time in a row, I've got 2 out of 2. All right, I've stated the feature and I've described it in 2 to 3 sentences. All right, and I've used phrases you could see here. I also know that Lanfranc, that this was when Lanfranc replaced Anglo-Saxon Archbishop Stigand. I've used a specific year here. So straight off the bat, I've got 2 out of 2 on question 1A and 2 out of 2 on question 1B. Okay, our next question I'd like to show you is the 16 marker. So again, here's our 16 marker of today, and what I might do is I might grab some different colours, like some highlighters, to annotate this question, colour code this question, as what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this question apart to demonstrate the areas or the different pieces of the sandwich that make up this exam question. So allow me to read this out to you. Robert's ambition to take control in Normandy was the main reason for the difficult relationship between William and his son Robert. How far do you agree? 16 marks. You may use Robert's revolt in Normandy and Robert's childhood. So first and foremost, our exam questions are made up of 3 parts. The first part is the command phrase, and I'm going to label this here, and I'm going to suggest you do the same. Command phrase. This, ladies and gents, is your instruction. What is it telling you to do? And in this instance, it is telling you to create an argument. What you have to do is you have to agree or disagree with the statement. Okay, the second element of this question is the focus. So this is what you need to be arguing with, all right? And our focus of the question is not necessarily Robert's ambition. In this instance, it's the difficult relationship between William and his son Robert, okay? So that's your focus. Whenever you are referring to or explaining how or why, you need to be explaining how each event led to the difficult relationship between William and his son Robert. Alright, that's the central focus of what you're looking at. And then finally, the final part of our exam question is what historians would refer to as the second order concept. I'm going to write that up here. Second order concept. And our second order concept today is significance. And the reason why I know it's significance is it's asking for the main reason. Okay? And again, a reminder, a significance simply just means it's another word for important. So how important is Robert's ambition? Is Robert's ambition to take over Normandy, is that the main reason, or are there other reasons why William and his son Robert had a difficult relationship? And in terms of the focus, actually, what I might suggest you do right now is take a pause and think about what facts you can reinforce, or what facts do you already have that refers to William's difficult relationship with his son Robert. So press pause, take all the time that you need, and think about what facts do you already know about this topic here, about William and his son Robert. So I went away there and had a little bit of thinking, and I remember that Robert, he hates William Rufus. You might remember there's this infamous incident with a chamber pot or a pot of pee, where William Rufus pours or covers Robert in pee during a fight, and William the Conqueror does nothing about it. You might also remember Robert's nickname, Robert Cuthrose. Which again means short legs or short stop. This is a nickname that Robert Cuthrose, or Robert, is given by his own father, by William. So could that make William a poor parent? I think so. And then finally, you might remember, and it says it down here in the question, that Robert goes on a revolt. The reason why I'm suggesting you do this is that as you go through these questions, and as the exam board comes in, as the exam day comes in, when you break apart a question like this helps you build up a network of knowledge that's relevant to the question. Now there's one final part that I've missed out, and that is this number down here. So again, you'll know this very well from your own history teacher and your lessons. 16 marks, that means you need to spend 20 minutes writing this question. That also means that you need to do 4 paragraphs. Those 4 paragraphs need to be, and it doesn't necessarily need to be any particular order, but it needs to be agree, disagree, agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. And then conclusion. Okay, so in a moment you're about to spend 20 minutes having a go at this question. Of course, use the resources in the bio. If you're not sure about, anything to do with Robert's relationship with William, I would suggest that you, rather than spending 20 minutes torturing yourself, you go away, do a revision, brush up on your knowledge, and then have a go at answering the question. But allow me to just demonstrate to you the success criteria. So I'm going to switch to green to show you the success criteria. I'm going to write this down here. Okay? The exam board will use phrases such as AO1. That is facts or knowledge. They will also use, oops, I need to finish my parentheses, they will also use something called AO2. That is explanation. And then finally, they will use one final element, which is AO2 judgment. And to keep that really simple, that is your evaluation. How well have you created an argument? Okay? So, allow me to demonstrate your success criteria for each one of these areas. Let's have a quick look. So first and foremost, if we are thinking about a level 3, so a level 3, that would get you somewhere between a grade 4 to 7. Alright, so grade 4 to 7, in terms of your knowledge, that means that you must have 2 facts. So just like the last question, for every single paragraph, you've got to have 2 facts. If you're a student that is desiring a level 7 and above, what you must have is you must have precise knowledge. And obviously it builds upon these 2 facts. So your 2 facts for level 4 must be really precise. So that must mean that you must have names, dates, and events, and so on. So it has to be as precise as humanly possible. Alright, and I always say, if you're not too sure, just have a little guess. Finally, moving along rather, so we now go on to explanation. Okay? So, if we again, so level 3, so these levels are not grades, they're the quality of your answer. So if we have a little look at level 3 for explanation, that must mean simple, it's a developed explanation. So that often means it's 2 sentences of explanation. And I tend to use the phrases how and why. Alright, you might go either or, so it might be how or why. Alright, level 4, again, these are for students that are going for 7 and above, which hopefully is everyone listening to this video. What you need to be doing is you need to be doing 3 sentences. And it must include a link. So, this shows Robert's ambition because, or this shows the poor relationship because, or this was important because. And then finally, your judgment. So, level 3, in this instance, would simply just have, there's an overall judgment. There's just a simple conclusion. You have said, overall, I think the main reason why William and Robert had a poor relationship was because of. This was important because. Alright? If you got the very top end, you might bring in a bit of subject knowledge into your conclusion, but simply, for level 3 in terms of conclusion, all you've done is you are just saying, the overall, I think that. Finally, for a level 4, which I think is very achievable, all you need to do is you just need to demonstrate your judgment throughout your entire piece. So you need to demonstrate your judgment throughout. And the way that you can do that is you can maybe compare reasons at the end of each paragraph, or you can have at your conclusion could simply use phrases such as, overall, I think that the main reason they had a poor relationship was. However, I appreciate, this is where you create links between your reasons, but then you go back to reinforce the main reason for your arguments. So, there's your success criteria there. There's your question of the day, which we've broken up. Again, what you need to do is you need to spend 20 minutes. At the end of this 20 minutes, I want you to press play, and we will mark one of my answers using this success criteria here, and we will compare my answer to yours, where you will be able to self-assess your own answer. Okay, press 20 minutes now, put a 20-minute timer on your phone. I'll see you in 20 minutes time. Hello. Welcome back. So I'm hoping there that you spent 20 minutes creating a fantastic argument telling me how far do you agree with the statement that Robert's ambition was to take control in Normandy was the main reason for the difficult relationship between William and his son Robert. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mark in green pen here. I'm going to suggest that you do the same, where you switch to a different coloured pen. Again, I just want to revisit that success criteria that we spoke through just before you press play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using these phrases here, AO1, AO2 and AO2 judgment. I personally am going to go for a grade 9 today, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for 16 out of 16. I'm going to be aiming for level 4. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a real quick key, AO1, AO2 and AO2J. And again, remember, AO1 is facts, AO2 is explanation, and AO2 judgment is that's your judgment, isn't it? That's your evaluation. Okay? So, again, I'm conscious of the fact that you might not be able to read my handwriting, so I'm going to read it out to you. And then, once I finish reading out the full piece, I'll go through and mark it as I would do as an examiner. So here's my first paragraph here. I accept the idea that Robert's ambition for Normandy was our reason why he and William had a poor relationship, but argue it had an equally important impact along with other reasons such as Robert's rivalry with William Rufus and William's treatment of Robert during his childhood. I hope you noticed something there. One reason why Robert and William had such a poor relationship was because of Robert's rebellion between 1077 and 1080. This was when Robert led an army and attempted to gain independent control of Normandy after William refused to give it to him. I also know that Robert attempted to seize Rouen, the capital of Normandy, and later unhorsed William in battle in 1079. This led to William losing trust and respect for his eldest son, as he did not expect him to go in revolt against him. This was significant as it deeply embarrassed William and demonstrated Robert's military skill. As a result of this rebellion, it likely soured their relationship permanently, despite reconciling. I've just put a definition for reconciling, that's when you restore friendly relations, despite reconciling in 1080. Going on to paragraph 3. Another reason why William and Robert had a poor relationship was because of William's favouritism and preference towards his second-born son and Robert's younger brother, William Rufus. For example, in 1077, an argument/fight between the two brothers resulted in Robert being covered in the contents of a chamber pot. Later, Robert sought out his father to punish his brother, William Rufus, and William did nothing. Additionally, in 1087, after the death of William the Conqueror, William Rufus inherited the English throne, and not Robert, the oldest son. This shows how Robert and William the Conqueror had a poor relationship, as William clearly preferred William Rufus over Robert. Both events led to revolts against his family and created further distrust between Robert and his father/brother. This is important because it shows Robert is not completely at fault for his poor relationship with his father. I'm just going to put an at just there. Finally, William and Robert had a poor relationship because of William's parenting. I know that William was exceptionally cruel and distant, just ask the people of the north, and demanded absolute obedience from his children. In contrast, Robert was generous, sociable, and less disciplined. This created a poor relationship between the pair, as William's parenting clearly had a psychological impact on Robert, and may have contributed to his reasoning behind rebelling against his father and brother. William even nicknamed Robert Cuthrose, or Short Legs, which shows the difficult relationship between the two, as William did not see Robert as his son, but more as a disappointment. Wowzers. This contrast in treatment created the poor relationship. Overall, I believe that the main reason why William I and Robert had a difficult relationship was because of William's parenting. I appreciate that Robert's rivalry with his brother, William Rufus, and his rebellion against his father between 1077 to 1080 would have contributed. However, these events would have not have happened without William's brutal parenting style and clear preference for William Rufus. So, I'm going to switch to green. I'm going to go back to the start. I'm going to mark it as an examiner. I'm going to do it paragraph by paragraph, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to write in AO1, AO2 or AO2J. Okay? Now firstly, what you might have noticed is that this first paragraph, I'm demonstrating history, but I'm not demonstrating my knowledge about the events. What I've done here is I've created a short introduction. I accept the idea that Robert's ambition was our reason. By doing that, what I've done here is I have brought in some AO2J. I brought in a judgment why he and William had a poor relationship, but would argue, and again I've used the word equally important here, so here I've added more judgment in, such as Robert's rivalry and with William Rufus and William's treatment of Robert during his childhood. Now the reason why I've done this, and the reason why I'm suggesting that you do this, is if you run out of time, you have got a judgment straight away. So if I run out of time in that 20 minutes that I've just taken, I've got my judgment straight away and I'm not missing out on those judgment marks. Okay, going on to my first paragraph. So I'm classing that as my introduction, what I've just told you, and now I'm classing this as my first paragraph. Okay? Now, again, I know this is the basics, but I just want to remind you, just simple point, evidence, explain. Here is my points. Here is my evidence. I won't do this for every paragraph. And here is my explanation. That yellow highlight is dying a death. This led to, and here is my explanation down here. So I won't be doing this for every paragraph, but I just wanted to demonstrate to you now, on my first one, how I've structured it there. And again, what I really want you to focus, just before I do go into AO1 and AO2, is some of these phrases. So one reason why, so I've simply rewritten the question and made a statement. This was when. Again, it's a nice descriptive phrase to demonstrate my knowledge. I also know that. Again, it's a nice descriptive phrase to demonstrate my knowledge. In terms of explanation, this led to, this was significant. As a result, 3 explanation phrases. You can probably see where I'm going with this or what I'm aiming to do. So firstly, where I've demonstrated this reason here with my points, what that is AO2. So brought in a reason. I've not yet explained it. I'm going to do that later on. But I brought in a reason, and the examiner would acknowledge that as AO2. This was when Robert led an army, so there's AO1, there's my subject knowledge, and attempted to gain control of Normandy after William refused to give it to him. So there's again AO1. Alright? And I'll tell you what, I'm thinking back to my success criteria here. So how do I demonstrate between level 3 and level 4? And what I might do is I might just add in a plus. Let's have a look, see if I've got any level 1 plus. Right, so, AO1 plus. I also know that Robert attempted to seize Rouen, the capital of Normandy, right? So what I'm going to do is, that's really precise knowledge. So I'm going to use the phrase AO1 plus to demonstrate precise knowledge. And later had horsed William in 1079. Again, more precise knowledge. Alright, what I've done is I've brought in, so you can see I've brought in 2 sentences there that describe the rebellion, but I've been really specific and brought in, or really precise and brought in, Rouen, the capital of Normandy in 1079, control of Normandy, and so on. So there's 2 facts in there with loads of precise knowledge. This led to William losing trust and respect for his son, son Robert, as he did not expect him to go to revolt. Again, here is my AO2. So what I've done here, ladies and gents, is I have explained the purpose of that, or why it led to the poor relationship. And again, remember the second order concept. So you notice I've looked at this word here, significant. The focus of the purpose of this question, the second order concept of this question is significance. So I'm talking about the importance of each reason. So again, I'm going to add in AO2 and I'm going to put a little plus next to it as I'm using significance within the question, or within my answer, sorry. And as a result, I love this phrase. What it does is it demonstrates why. As a result of the rebellion, it likely soured the relationship permanently, despite reconciling in 1080. And again, there's more AO2 there. Okay, right, let's go into my next paragraph then. So you'll already be able to see, I can see plenty of years there, so there's AO1 plus in there. Again, your first sentence, or where you present your points, that will always be AO2. So here's my points over here. Again, I've referred to the term chamber pot. I don't know how precise that knowledge is. I don't think I need to describe the contents of the chamber pot too much, but I brought that in there. Additionally, in 1087, after the death of William the Conqueror, again, I'm going to annotate that as AO1 plus, really precise knowledge about 1087. I would also probably add in about the fact that William Rufus inherited the throne. Well, that's definitely AO1. I'm not sure about whether it's AO1 plus. I probably should have mentioned about William Rufus inheriting Normandy, which you'd think he'd be happy about in the end if that's all he wanted, which maybe demonstrates that it wasn't the main reason why he had a poor relationship. This shows how Robert and William the Conqueror had a poor relationship, as he clearly preferred William Rufus. And I like this use of the word clearly here, and I might use that to demonstrate AO2J, as there's a preference there, isn't there? What I've done there is I've demonstrated how important that reason is over other reasons, just by using the word clearly. Both events led to the revolts against his family and created further distrust between his father/brother. This is important again, linking back in there, this is important. Not every question will be a significant question, but this one specifically is. So I've used an AO2 phrase there again, as it shows Robert is not completely at fault. Now again, not completely at fault. I'm using a bit of the idea around the question here. I've sort of linked in the statement back into my answer here. So I'm going to use AO2J just there. This is really hard history. But what I've done here is I've simply just said, I've almost compared this, I brought this sentence to link it back to the question. Is it the main reason why they had a poor relationship? Probably not. And you can see, I mean, you've already read my conclusion, but you can see where I'm going with this here. Finally, Robert and William had a poor relationship because of William's parenting. Again, there's my AO2. There's my point. I've just demonstrated a reason. I've just stated it. I've not explained it yet. I know that William was exceptionally cruel and demanded absolute obedience from his children. Again, AO1. In contrast, Robert was generous, sociable, and less disciplined. Again, AO1. Now what I'm going on is I'm going to explain this created a poor relationship between the pair, as William's parenting clearly had a psychological impact on Robert and may have contributed to his reasoning behind rebelling against his father and brother. Here, I think, is really strong explanation, because all I'm saying is here is that this is the main reason. So theoretically, I could even skip out the conclusion because I'm tying whatever I've written in here to the central focus of the argument. William even nicknamed Robert Cuthrose, so AO1 there, just snuck it in, or short legs, which shows the difficult relationship between the two, as William did not see Robert as his son, but more as a disappointment. I've read that twice now, and obviously I wrote it. My gosh, feeling so sad about that. So there's a bit of AO1 there, but this whole little second half of the paragraph is AO2, explaining how each of these reasons led to a difficult relationship. And then finally, this whole paragraph, I'm aiming for it to be mostly AO2J. Let's have a look here. I believe the main reason why they had a difficult relationship was because of William's parenting. So this is AO2, but specifically AO2J. I've presented my argument. I overall think it was this. I appreciate Robert's rivalry with his brother, William Rufus and his rebellion against his father between 1077 and 1080 would have contributed. Again, what I've done there is I've brought in my overall opinion, and I've brought it in, and I've almost compared it. I've appreciated the arguments around these two. However, these events would not have happened without William's brutal parenting style and clear preference for William Rufus. Wowzers. So, as an examiner, what I would do, and when I come round to read yours, what I would do is this, is I would have AO1, AO2, and AO2J. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my success criteria just here. So, let's talk about knowledge. Well, have I brought in 2 facts for every paragraph? Well, yes, I brought in 2 facts. Have I used precise knowledge? Not, I would absolutely say so, yes. Not necessarily my final paragraph. I wish, if I was looking at this final paragraph again, maybe I could have brought in some more years, or maybe I could have brought in a specific event whereby he was particularly cruel. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to class that as level 4. But I'm being really harsh to myself. I might just call it level 4 minus, just for that final paragraph. And I might put that just there. Final paragraph. Obviously, this is really specific to what I've written and not necessarily yours. AO2, let's have a quick look here. So, my success criteria down here is 2 sentences of explanation how and why, or 3 sentences the how and the why and the link. I know I've done pretty strong here, so I've clearly gone on to say how this shows the poor relationship, or how it created the poor relationship, or how in comparison to other reasons it created the poor relationship. So again, I've linked it to the question. I'm going with a level 4 there. And then finally, for level 2 judgment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, have I done a conclusion? Yes, but remember, I've also got in here, I've got a little introduction where I talk about where I know that the rebellion is a reason, but I brought in other reasons as well. And then in my final conclusions, I've compared that reason. What I think is the main one is William's parenting. I've compared it with the other 2, and I do agree. I think it's I do argue that without his terrible parenting, the other things wouldn't have happened. So what I've done is I've demonstrated my judgment throughout, and I'm going level 4 here. So out of 16, because it's a level 4 minus, I would probably say maybe 14 if you're a harsh examiner like me, or 15 out of 16, which isn't half bad that. So, take the time now to read through yours and repeat what I've just done. Again, all you're doing is just annotating the level at the AO1, AO2, and AO3. If you've brought in specific facts, or precise facts, I tend to use AO1 plus. If you have used phrases such as this led to, this meant that, this shows, or as a result, I would tend to annotate that with AO2. Again, remember, for level 4, you want to have 3 sentences and a link. And then for AO2J, if you've done just a simple conclusion, I will class it as level 3. If you're a student that has demonstrated your judgment throughout, that's probably level 4. You might find yourself where you might have, because what you might have done is you might have done your AO1, you might have thought about, and you might have gone away and done some revision and done some reading, and you might have put in some level 4 knowledge. What you might do is you might have done some explanations, but you might be somewhere between 2 sentences or 3 sentences of link, so you might end up finding yourself as level 3 plus, or maybe level 4 minus. And then finally, you might find yourself into AO2J, and you might find yourself, maybe I've just done a conclusion that's level 3. All that matters is best fit. The whole purpose of this is for you to understand what precisely the exam scheme or the mark scheme is after from you. And that's the purpose of the session. I'd like to thank you for your time and your dedication to history. If you would like to see more, please feel free to have a look at Every Mark Matters on YouTube. I'm going to be constantly working on these and building these and uploading these over the next few weeks. Thank you very much for your time. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.